Okay. Hi, I'm Christine. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about exempt versus non-exempt. I have a PowerPoint presentation for you. So this is just general information. The webinars are intended for educational purposes only. We hope you learn from this information. We are not attorneys. Therefore, all information provided during this presentation in the Q&A session should not be construed as legal advice. Who we are. We are a team of all females that work in human resources and operations. We specialize in small to mid-sized businesses, HR, and operations support. This is me. I've a background in retail security and over 5 years working in the HR field. I am a problem solver. My background, as you can see, employee management, leave of absence, recruiting, and policy building. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to go over what FLSA is, who has to comply, some lingo, mistakes, deductions, terminating exempt employees, if you have to reclassify, all sorts of fun stuff. One second, my computer is running low on battery. For some reason, it's not charging. I might have to relocate. Hold on one moment. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Okay. That is not working either. Stand by one moment. Okay, we're back. So first off, we're going to talk about what FLSA, what is it? The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1983 is a United States labor law that creates the right to a minimum wage and time and a half overpay when people work over 40 hours a week. It prohibits employment of minors in oppressive child labor. It defines and classifies employees under exemption status for overtime pay. So who's covered? It applies only to employers whose annual sales total over $500,000 or more. So basically, you might think that this would restrict the FLSA to covering only employees in large companies, but in reality, the law covers nearly all workplaces. This is because the courts have interpreted the term interstate commerce very broadly. Okay. So a lot of people have a hard time with exempt versus non-exempt. They don't think that they can be paired with one another. They feel they think that exempt has to be salaried or non-exempt has to be hourly. That's not true. It could go either way. They can be paired with one another. So the FLSA also provides an exemption from both minimum wage and overtime pay for employees employed as bona fide executive, administrative, professional, and outside sales employees, as well as certain computer and creative employees. So to qualify for exemption, employees must meet certain tests regarding their job duties and be paid on a salary basis at not less than $684 a week. The job titles, a lot of people believe that the job titles determine exempt status, and that's not the truth. So to qualify for an executive employee exemption, all of the following tests must be met. So they have to fulfill all of these in order to get that exemption. Administrative exemption. So to qualify, all of these also must be met to obtain an administrative exemption. So they must be compensated on salary or fee base at a rate of not less than $684 a week. The employee's primary duty must be the performance, office, or non-manual work directly related to management or general business operations. Employees' primary duty includes the exercise of discretion and independent judgment with respect to matters of significance. So if they're not meeting all three of these criteria, then they're not going to be qualified for an administrative exemption. Professional exemption, to qualify for that, you also need all of the below mentioned. I'm just going to go over them. The $684 per week. Employees' primary duty must be performance of work requiring advanced knowledge, defined as work which is predominantly intellectual in character, and which includes work requiring the consent, exercise, discretion, and judgment. Advanced knowledge must be in the field of science or learning. So if they don't have any of this, they are not eligible for a professional exemption. Creative employee exemption, to qualify for creative professional employee exemption, all of the following must be met. Again, the $684 per week. The employer's primary duty must be the performance of work requiring invention, imagination, originality, or talent in a recognized field of artistic and creative endeavor. Computer employee exemptions. So this one's a little bit different. If compensated on an hourly basis at the rate not less than $27.63 an hour. So still not less than $684. Employees' primary duty must consist of application systems and analysis. So all these tests must be met in order for them to be a computer employee, to obtain a computer employee exemption. Outside sales exemption. So this one's a little bit different. Employees' primary duty must be making sales or obtaining orders or contracts for services or for the client use of facilities for which a consideration will be paid by the client or customer. They must customarily and regularly engage away from the employer's place or places of business. The salary basis and salary requirements do not apply for this exemption. So it doesn't have to meet the $684 a week. So there's a lot of common mistakes that companies make. There is no formal sick time off policy, but salaried workers are docked for the missed time due to illness. Exempt workers are paid less than full salary each week. Employees deemed exempt perform nearly exclusively routine work that has no bearing on setting management policies. If they have scholastic degrees, perform exclusively unprofessional, unrelated work. Acquired job skills are confused with the need to use independent judgment and discretion. And then salaried employees are all labeled exempt without regard to actual work duties or the percentage of time spent on them. So again, this is one of the topics that the most common mistakes that we see is people thinking that salaried employees all have to be exempt. Moving exempt to non-exempt. An exempt employee who moves to part-time hours in the same role but makes less than $684 per week, now non-exempt due to failure to meet the salary test. Well, is an exempt employee, I'm sorry, who moves to part-time hours in the same role but makes less than $684 a week, now non-exempt due to failure to meet the salary test. The answer is yes, they have to meet that test. All those bullet points back in the last slide, you have to meet them all in order to be exempt. So there's no prorating of minimum salary level for the exemption. On the other hand, a part-time employee should not be working overtime hours, and thus no overtime would be due. Permitted deductions. The following are permitted deductions from exempt employees. In the first and last weeks of employment, in full day increments when an employee is absent for personal reasons, in full day increments when an employee is absent due to sickness or disability, but only when a sick or paid time off policy is offered to exempt employees and the employee has exhausted all of his or her available time. In full or partial day increments, for any unpaid leave taken under the FMLA, on full day increments only for suspensions due to serious misconduct that violates. So those are the only permitted deductions for these exempt employees. Prohibited deductions, we want to make sure that we're not deducting from these employees for partial days. Deductions cannot be made for jury or witness duty except for a deduction for fees received unless the employee performs no work the entire work week. Employers cannot dock pay for businesses closures or lack of work. So holidays, days where employees are sent home early due to lack of work, or due to the organization closing because of weather, rain, snow, hurricane. Terminating exempt employees. If an exempt employee resigns or terminates midweek, is the employer required to pay a full week's salary? The answer to that is no. You can pay the employee a proportionate amount of the salary for the first and last weeks of employment. If the employee starts or terminates midweek, working only 3 of 5 days, you may pay the employee 3/5 of the salary. So you do not have to pay them their full week salary. So how do you reclassify? Reclassification requires careful communication. Never admit a legal violation. After all, exempt status of employees is often legally uncertain, and changes are a matter of caution. Communication should focus instead on market-based compensation reviews, changes in law or job, or corporate changes. Always focus on the positive. You will now be eligible for overtime. Avoid the negative. Your total compensation will not change, and you may earn more if you work overtime hours. Penalty and fees. Super important. With regards to the FLSA, whenever an employer wrongfully classifies an employee as exempt who is in fact non-exempt, they may be held liable for all unpaid overtime owed to that employee, going back as far as 3 years prior to the claim. In addition, the court may levy penalties against that employer in the form of liquidated damages in the amount equal to the sum of the unpaid wages that the employee is owed. Furthermore, those employers who are willfully and or repeatedly misclassifying employees as exempt are subject to $1,000 in civil penalties for each violation and may be criminally prosecuted as well, which was which would expose them to a fine of up to $10,000 or incarceration. So it's really important that you're taking the time to make sure that these employees are hitting every single one of those tests before you're classifying them. So almost everyone is covered under FLSA. There are 6 different types of exemptions. Again, classification is super important. We can't stress that enough. You want to make sure that they're hitting every single one of those tests before you put them in. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can reach us at our info@BlueLion, our telephone number, or any questions you can post on social media as well. If you have any questions for me, I am going to open up the chat, look at just put them right in the chat and I'll look at them. Okay. No more questions? All right, I'm going to log off. Thank you very much, everybody.